Hello everyone, how are you all doing today? So what does it mean to you if someone comes to you and compliments the work you are doing? How do you feel? Not just how do you feel, how do you react to how you feel? I'm going to tell you what I do. There is that surge of endorphins every time somebody says, oh, well done, I appreciate the work you are doing. In 30 seconds, I feel good. In the next seconds after those 30 seconds, automatically I begin to think, don't let it get into your head. Calm down. And there is that battle until I walk myself back to the place where I start countering those compliments with stuff like, really, what am I doing? I counter those things by trying to degrade that compliment. And so today, let's talk about external validation. And for the purposes of this discussion, external validation would not mean waiting for people to give you a sense of who you are or waiting for their approval to make you realize who you are. No, that would not be our definition for this discussion. For this discussion, I will see external validation as people's acceptance of you, people's acknowledgement of what you represent. So that's external validation. So how do we see external validation? What does it do for you? How do you manage it? That's just what I want to look into for this discussion. And again, I'm going to look at a few places in the Bible where somebody was, complimented or acknowledged or validated by somebody other than him, and what to make out of this. And before I go to the disclaimer here, this is not for people who crave this validation from other people. This is not for people who depend, because it's addictive. External validation not managed can easily get addictive. So this is not for them. So this is for a small subset of people who have worked themselves up to the point where they don't even know how to take a compliment. Who have worked themselves to the point where every compliment there's a gate, and we're wondering, is this the one to take? And don't be too hasty about this. Don't take this for yourself, okay? And so the first place I want to look at is when Moses was blessing the children of Israel, and he said to Asher, let him be acceptable to his brothers. Other translations read, let him be favored by his brothers. And so it's a blessing that other people accept you. It's a blessing that other people acknowledge you. So it's a blessing, and we are blessed. Let's treat it as such. Every time someone, feels good about what you have done and they are polite and humble enough to tell you about it, it's a blessing. Another one, this was Jesus defending himself among the Pharisees and people who thought that it was so reckless of him to see himself as God. And in John chapter 5 verse 31, Jesus tells them, if I tell people about myself, they cannot be sure that what I say is true. But there is someone else who tells people about me, and I know that what he says about me is true. You sent men to John, and he has told you what is true. This is John chapter 5 verse 31, 32, and 33. You sent men to John meaning John the Baptist, and what he has told you is true. This is Jesus referring people to what has been said by someone other than him about him. As you grow in life, it's going to become important that other people accredit you. It's going to become important that other people can make a good reference both to your face and outside you. And so every time people say that, it's going to help that you learn early how to begin to take acknowledgement from other people and even sometimes encourage it. I'm going to go to the actual test I have about this. There is this man in the Bible, a young boy called Gideon, and in Judges chapter 6, God wanted to save the Israelites this one time. After he had saved them severally and they had gone back to their ways, he wanted to save them just this other time. And he chose Gideon. And Gideon went into this conversation with the angel of God, and God saying, look, my family is the smallest and I am the youngest in my family. Why me? And God kept on showing him signs. This is me. God first of all had to prove to Gideon that it was him calling Gideon, that it was him telling Gideon what to do. And while that happened, God told him, this is what is going to happen. You are going to go with just 300 men and you're going to take over the Midianites. And I think God sensed that Gideon wasn't quite sure, that Gideon wasn't confident. And so God said to Gideon, if you are afraid, I need you to go to the camp of the Midianites. I need you to hear what they are saying concerning you. And so Gideon picked his servant and went to the camp of the Midianites. And when he got close enough to hear what it was that was being said about him, he heard an enemy actually say, that Gideon guy, God is going to let him take over the entire Midianites. And the Bible recorded that as soon as Gideon heard it, he worshipped. So he had a belief about God. He felt God was leading him to do something. But he had heard enough of how his family is the smallest. He has heard enough of how he is the smallest. He must have heard some things about his own personal weakness, that it was important for him to hear from an external person. In fact, somebody who had no business commending him, somebody who had no business acknowledging him. It was important for Gideon to hear that from that external force to get into action. As soon as Gideon heard that, he gathered his people, he had strategy immediately, he knew what he wanted to do immediately, and he took over the Midianites. And that was what was necessary for Gideon. And God had to make it happen, that Gideon needed to hear someone other than himself, other than his brethren, tell him that you are actually the man for the job. And so this video is actually for all the Gideons out there, for all the people like Gideon who really need to hear. And sometimes it's not that you don't hear, it's that you don't even believe what you hear. This is yet another message. This is yet God finding another way to reach you and saying, expect that when you go into this camp, expect that when you go into this territory, you are going to hear people who have no business saying something good about you, say things good about you. And when that happens, I want you to know that I allowed you here. It's me who let them say those things. It's me who allowed you here. Allow yourself acknowledge that acknowledgement, if you follow. Allow yourself assimilate and accept that there is something about you that makes it you. There is something that makes it to have to be you. It has to be you. And I've been trying to tell you, and there is nothing wrong with other people saying that. So if I have allowed them to say it, and if I have allowed you to hear it, hey, if it is good, work on it. And let me tell you, there is something that hearing that kind of recommendation does. There is a wave it brings. Let that wave be productive for you. Ride on the tide of that wave and use it for something good. And so Gideon, used that at this time. The only way that external validation can be completely wrong is when it is from the wrong people. And so you always have to have the word of God as your North Pole. Okay, so no matter what is happening, no matter what you have heard from what I have said, just let it align with what God has said. Because if it is God who has allowed them to say it, it will resonate with what God has been telling you. If it does not resonate with what God has been telling you, then that is one of them recommendations that you need to discard. Okay, that's the major caveat. But when God has been telling you and telling you and telling you, sometimes he allows you to hear from the enemy how much they know about you, how much they know about what God has said about you. And when that happens, ride on that wave. Can only hope I have expressed myself well this afternoon. All right, have a great day.